Hope you're enjoying Bill's series on the Book of Ruth. There's still a couple more episodes to come, but I thought I'd share a few thoughts from the Book of Judges, maybe 2 or 3. But today I'd just like to set the scene. I don't know how familiar you are with the Book of Judges. It comes just before Ruth, and historically it's what happens after the Book of Joshua, so the settling of Israel into their promised land. And the Judges, well, there's about a dozen of them. The most famous one is probably Samson, though you may have heard of Gideon. And they are people who became effectively the leaders of the tribes of Israel in this period of their history before they had kings. That comes later. So let's just look at the time in their history, because after the time of Joshua. So Israel have been delivered out of Egypt. They've travelled through the desert for 40 years and they've finally come into the promised land at the second attempt. And they've kind of been effectively establishing God's ways in that portion of the Middle East. It's not gone too brilliantly, but let me just read you the first bit of chapter 2. The angel of the Lord came up from Gilgal to Bochim, and he said, I brought you up out of Egypt and led you into the land which I have sworn to your fathers, and I said, I'll never break my covenant with you. And as for you, you shall make no covenant with the inhabitants of this land. You shall tear down their altars. It's not really history that I want to talk about, because our history is that we've come into a relationship with God through Jesus, and that transforms our lives. Often it's just a beginning, and it's something that grows as we mature and get to know how God works through us more intimately. So in a way, we're a little bit like Israel. God has apprehended us, and he's took us through that initial stage, if you like, through baptism, into a new relationship with him. And his covenant is with us individually rather than as a nation. And just like the one with Israel, I'll never break my covenant with you. We are safe in his hands. God has rescued us. And it's, what do we do with the rest of our lives? How do we allow that new life to flourish? And in some ways, equivalent to Israel, it said, look, don't follow the idols. Don't get into worshipping the things that have been worshipped in this place. Keep God as your primary focus. Now, what happens? Well, you probably would have guessed that sometimes the nation of Israel did all right, but sometimes, most of the time, they didn't. They were tempted, they failed. God was still faithful, and part of that faithfulness was sending judges. So we will, in the next couple of little talks, have a look at the example of how the judges functioned, our 2 particular ones really, what they did and what we can learn from how God dealt with Israel, apply to how God deals with us, and how he leads us and enables us to grow and mature. And as ever, God's perspective on life is different from ours. We get stuck in loops, and God, with a fresh view of reality, gets us out of those ruts, gets us out of those traps, gets us out of those snares, and sets us back on track. So let's have a look, not today, at some of the examples from Judges of how God got his people back on track and what we can learn from that.